Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with the latest in budget deck technology. And for today's deck tech, first off I want to simply say Happy Turkey Day for those of you who celebrate, but even if you don't, this multi-course meal of a deck is still super sweet to play. Fair warning, we're going to be a little pun happy today, just trying to get that out of the way for you now. No! So with that, join me today as I take this deck into the historic Brawl format for a holiday themed deck that I am simply calling You Got Served. But before we continue, if you do like any of the content that I do, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you watch the content so you don't miss out on any of the gameplay, booster pack openings, deck decks, and so much more. Longtime viewers of the channel know how we have to do it. We have to talk about the stats of the deck before we dive right into it. So our historic Brawl deck is going to be rocking today white, red, and green colors. We're running an average mana curve of about 2.6. As far as our creatures, we have 24 total in the deck. We have 8 instants, 10 sorceries, 14 artifacts, 9 enchantments, a single planeswalker, and a single battle, and rounding it out with 36 lands total for the deck. Now, when you think of Turkey Day, you obviously think about eating a ton of food. Correct! And that's exactly how we're going to focus on this deck today. Now, before we even talk about that, let's go ahead, of course, go over the commander. Rocco Street Chef here is a 3-mana Naya color, or for those of you who are Zoomers, Cabaretti, colors of white, green, and red. That is a legendary elf druid 2/4, and it reads, at the beginning of your end step, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until your next end step, each player may play the card they exiled this way. Whenever a player plays a land card from exile or casts a spell from exile, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and create a food token. Woo! He definitely provides a lot of value for us, and normally we don't want to give our opponent some extra cards for value, but again, it is a holiday, and of course, we want it to be just a little bit generous to our opponent. So with that, let's go over the creatures in the deck first. We're going to be talking about Unlucky Witness here. It dies, it exiles a couple cards that we can pick, which then triggers off Rocco, of course. You have Haywire Might here for artifact and enchantment hate. Gilded Goose here, really great, creates food for us, and we can sack them to fix our mana. Gingerbrute here is a food golem. Nimble Hobbit here taps down some stuff. Marriott Brandybuck is a legendary halfling. You'll notice though, of course, we have in the deck a lot of hobbits, or as Magic would say, they're going to be called halflings because, again, you know, copyrights and all that stuff. This halfling citizen basically creates for some more food tokens. Tough Cookie here is also not only a food itself, but it creates a food token. Super sweet in the deck, and also can then turn some of those food into 4/4 artifact creatures temporarily. PNLR here doesn't actually create food for us, but doesn't take advantage of the exiling ability that Rocco has also, and then it creates itself a small army of Thopter tokens. Samwise Gamgee here, this legendary creature can also create for some food tokens, but also we can sack the food tokens to bring back a historic card. Primarily, Sir Ginger here is just for flavor purposes. Flavor, don't you get it? No! Please don't turn off the video. As far as the 3-drop slot, we're looking at East Farthing Farmer here. Actually, this provides for us a lot of pump for each food we control when it enters the battlefield and creates that food token. Rosie Cotton of South Lane here. I actually really like this card, and also it goes well with another card we have, which is Scurry Oak. So if you haven't seen this already, there is an infinite combo you can have with Scurry Oak and Rosie Cotton. We actually even built a whole deck around that for 60 card formats. So check that video out if you want to. I'll leave the link above. Adventure cards like Woodland Acolyte here also trigger off the ability that Rocco Street Chef has, since it does have the card put into exile. Can draw a card for us and also bring something back from the graveyard we can reuse. Brandywine Farmer here, another halfling, creates a food token. Hollow Scavenger, same thing, has adventure on it, so it can create a food token for us and also can use them to pump itself up. Peregrine Took here also takes advantage of some of the food that we have to help us draw some cards. Rosethorn Acolyte, another adventure here, and also has mana fixing for us. Scurry Oak I just mentioned earlier, so be sure to check out again that infinite combo if you haven't done so already in the other video. Tireless Provisioner here. We aren't actually a landfall deck, but we do want to take advantage of the fact that this can provide for us not only food tokens, but also treasure tokens. Bill the Pony here, oh, he's so cute, creates some food tokens for us. We could sack them to then assign our combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Eleanor Gardener here, also going to be a sweet card, but we can also sack some food to help us draw some of our basic lands out of the deck. Butterbear Breekeeper here, not anything super crazy, but of course it helps create for us a food token if we don't have one. Quintorius here is actually not a creature, but it is one of our finishers in the deck. Quintorius here, this is an awesome card, so let's talk about it for a second here. This legendary planeswalker has a static ability that reads, whenever you cast a spell from exile, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. You can +1 to create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. You can discover 4 if you -3, and then the -6 ultimate is exile any number of target cards from your graveyard. You add red mana for each card exiled this way, and then you may play those cards this turn. Woo! This card, of course, can do a lot of work for what it's trying to do, but ideally you want to keep it on the battlefield just to then do its life gain and drain ability. However, the Discover thing is not to be underestimated in this deck either. Feasting Troll King here, another one of our finishers here, creates a bunch of food tokens when you hard cast it, but of course if you do bring it back from the graveyard, can also take advantage of the extra food that we will have, so you can keep bringing it back for free basically. Beanstalk Giant here helps us draw and fix our mana, but also it comes down and does a ton of damage, of course equal to the number of lands we control. As for the instants and sorceries, we have a couple of combat tricks such as Pippin's Bravery here. We have Hobbit Sting for a little bit of removal as long as we have a ton of food to work with. Blazing Crescendo here, also a combat trick, but also it could help us exile a card that we could take advantage of with Rocco's ability. You find some prisoners, also same thing, you can either destroy an artifact or you can exile some stuff, taking advantage of Rocco of course. Insatiable Appetite, another thing that takes advantage of food by giving us some stronger pump. Second Breakfast here, same thing, we can create some food tokens, another bit of pump. Stew the Convoys here can also do some removal, but also creates another food for us. Plated Onslaught here is also a solid option for us when we start going wide with, say, Pia Nalar's ability here, and then creates with a bunch of food tokens with Rocco to then make the Affinity ability even cheaper. Well, ideally, you'll only have to cast this then for 2 mana. In the sorcery spot, we have many parties here to search for some lands, create some food. Reckless Impulse and Ren's Resolve, exactly the same thing. They exile some cards for us, triggering off Rocco's ability. Revive the Shire can help us bring back another card that we want to reuse again to create some more food. Light up the Stage, similar to Ren's Resolve. Giant Opportunity here, flexible card here where you can either make a 7/7 giant creature token or you can get some food. Return to the Wilds, also some more ramp, or you can create a human, or you can create a food. Spider Food can create also a food token for us while also destroying an artifact, enchantment, or a creature with flying. Late to Dinner can bring back another creature that we want to bring back from the graveyard, create another food. And then, as our safety valve, we do utilize Farewell. As for your rest of your support for your artifacts, enchantments, and battles, you have Mishra's Bauble here. Helps us, of course, dig out an extra card for free. Experimental Synthesizer, same thing, it also exiles some cards. Maybe you can even create a Samurai in a pinch if you need to. Candy Trail here, also for flavor purposes, but also you can then gain some life and draw a card. Witch's Oven here, honestly you mostly don't want to sacrifice too many of your creatures, but if you have to make some quick food in a pinch, it can help us do that. Invasion of Gobakon here can flip itself into a ability that puts +1/+1 counters if we do destroy it, and also provides for us a nice little layer of protection if we start going wide and big. Michiko's Reign of Truth can help us also have a creature go super big because we will have a ton of artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield. Ossification for removal. Birth of Meletis for fixing for our land to get out of basic planes. It also creates for us a token, creates some life. Trail of Crumbs also is one of our major engine pieces here because this can take advantage of all the food that we have. Every time we sack a food, we can pay one and then help dig out another card from our deck. Welcome to Sweet Tooth, creating another human creature token, some food, and put some +1/+1 counters on a creature. Arcane Signet, a staple, you gotta have it for mana fixing. Golden Egg and Lembos can help us draw some cards, but also they are considered food so we can take advantage of later in the game. For Swiftfoot Boots, you'll utilize this, of course, to protect Rocco itself. 3 bowls of porridge, similar to the Golden Egg and the Lambas, is just another food for flavor purposes. Touch the Spirit Realm here. You can also flicker this if you need to then bring something back to do some additional triggering or provide some protection, or you can also use it for removal if you absolutely need to. Spelunking, really awesome card. I did talk about this in a YouTube short where ideally it can then make all of our tap lands untapped. Really awesome for budget decks out there. Night of Sweet Revenge, this is one of your finishers that you want to take advantage of this. This literally is a sweet card. No! The card, of course, can then pump up our entire team, similar to a Crater Hoof Behemoth, if you will, where then it can put +X until all of our creatures until end of turn for the amount of food we have. Really, really powerful, and also helps us fix our mana base very well. Showdown of the Scalds here can help us exile some cards on its first Saga ability, which we can take advantage of if we have Rocco out, and then put +1/+1 counters on everything whenever we cast spells for the next 12 turns. And to round out the package, Ariet's Tempting Apple here. You can gain control of any creature when it enters the battlefield, so take advantage of this as pseudo removal. If you have this out and say the Witch's Oven, you can then get rid of something very easily, and also it's a food itself, so it has to be here for flavor purposes. As for your land base, it's basically going to be as simple as can be, so you have a bunch of plains, you have some mountains, and a ton of forests. As for your budget lands, you have Chefette Dunes here, can pump up the whole team with +1/+1. Gingerbread Cabin, if you can get it, it basically gives you a free food. Hay Shop Oasis can help something go big. The Shire can help us tap some stuff down and create some more food. Game Trail here, Rugged Highlands, Lorehold Campus, Windscar Crag, Blossoming Sands, Fortified Village, Cabaret Courtyard, Command Towers a staple, Evolving Wilds to fix. Pit of Offerings, really awesome as a pseudo graveyard hate, but also can help us then fix our mana a little bit. And finally, a Terraformific Expanse that does the exact same thing as an Evolving Wilds. Sorry that took so long, everybody, but now that I finally have that giant explanation out of the way, let's go over the fun part, of course, the deck. So we're going to talk about tips, as always, with these mini deck techs, as you see some gameplay footage playing above. So keep in mind that a couple of tips that you want to do is, if you know the coast is clear and say like your opponent doesn't have removal immediately, take advantage of the fact that Rocco is only 3 mana, so you can get him out as quickly as turn 3, and then take advantage of the fact that you'll be able to then start drawing a bunch of extra cards by exiling them. Your opponent, of course, is also going to get this advantage too. However, remember that with Rocco's ability, as they play at cards from exile, you will get the benefits, of course, of Rocco by putting +1/+1 counters either on him or any other creature that you have on the battlefield. You'll make a ton of food, so the biggest advantage you have is against aggro decks, you'll have a ton of ways of stabilizing because you'll have plenty of food to pop open if you absolutely need to do that. However, ideally, you want to try to save up your food as much as possible so you can take advantage of some of the other cards that get the payoffs from it. So cards like Hobbit Sting can be great for you when you need to do some bigger removal. You have cards such as Feasting Troll King, which also can create food, but again, can take advantage of food by if it has to be aggressive, even if it dies, you can then sack that food to bring it back. Same with other sacking abilities such as Samwise Gamgee can help you bring back some of your historic cards back to your hand so that you can recast them a little bit later on. Remember that again, that means that historic cards are artifacts, enchantment that are sagas, and also legendary creatures. So say even if Rocco gets destroyed and has to go back to the command zone, you technically can get around that command tax if it goes to the graveyard, and then Samwise can then sack those foods that maybe you have a bunch of to then bring it back so you can cast them even cheaper, just as an FYI. As you are going wide with it, ideally if you can get Pia and Nalar out, Rocco can then take advantage of putting those +1/+1 counters on the Thopters, and then you have a very strong and evasive army that your opponent may have a hard time dealing with. Otherwise, your other way of getting to that victory is by pumping up something else that's an individual card, like again, that Feasting Troll King or a Beanstalk Giant, or taking advantage of Michigo's Reign of Truth, which can then flip into one giant creature because you will have a ton of food to work with, and they all are considered artifacts, so take advantage of that. Finally, of course, if you just want to do all of it all at once, Naya Sweet's Revenge is going to be the best option for you, and that's again because you can take advantage of all the food, tap them down, sack it, and then just pump up your entire team for a one giant one-hit KO. Or if you are trying to go a little bit lower but also quicker, you can also then use the combat trick again of Plated Onslaught if you have a ton of Thopters on the battlefield. However, the biggest challenge to the deck that you are going to face is, besides being a budget deck, the other downside, of course, is going to be if you have an opponent that does a lot of artifact and enchantment hate, that's where the deck is going to struggle, because although some of your creatures are resilient and take advantage of foods, they can't do anything if your foods don't stay on the battlefield. So although I will recommend, if you have to pop a couple of them to stabilize, by all means do so, just understand that you will not be able to do too much of your game plan if you don't have at least some food to work with. But otherwise, my only other final thing I want to say is if you are interested in upgrading the deck, the only thing I'm going to say, at least this time around, is just upgrade the mana base. Yes, you can go over some of the other stuff in here. Maybe you can add in some cards that take advantage of the +1/+1 counter abilities that Rocco has, but that might be a slightly different deck, and it might be a little hard to put into this because, again, the main focus of this version of the deck is just simply food. But if you want to go a little versatile, the only other cards I would recommend are cards like Hardened Scales, because that will then start pumping up your +1/+1 abilities. There are also going to be some other cards I will highlight, as you can see on screen right now, that of course will take advantage of some of the +1/+1 counter abilities if you want to go that direction with the deck. But otherwise, since again we are talking about Turkey Day, that's mostly why we're focusing on food here. My only other final thoughts we're going to say is I had a lot of fun, of course, playing this deck and putting it together for all of you out there. It definitely is something that I will definitely say is a little bit more different when it comes to making a food deck out there, but it's definitely something that I can recommend for any player out there who is interested in trying something out that's not only on flavor, boo, you stink! But also for the fact that it's actually a lot of fun and quite powerful despite it being a budget deck. So even if you want to put it together even in saved paper, of course you'll have that link for this in the comments below. But otherwise, if you are a fan of food synergies, if you are a fan of pump abilities, if you are a fan of going big and wide in the same deck while being super versatile, I would definitely say give this deck a try. And I assure you, when you serve up a victory for yourself at the defeat of your opponent, you'll definitely have a lot of fun doing so. You'll have a lot of fun whether you play this on Turkey Day or any other day, and you'll definitely not be disappointed. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.